Good morning, Rabbi Isai. Says the Heilige Mishnah Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis. Shochat shnei kvasim lechol achas menachos lamachar. So we know that on Shavuos you bring 2 breads and you bring 2 sheep. In order to eat the breads, you must be makriv the 2 sheep. So the 2 sheep are the matir to eat the breads. In order to eat the breads, you must put the 2 sheep on the mizbeach. In other words, the only way, what gives you a heter, what allows you to eat the breads, is the fact that you're going to be putting on 2 sheep, now 1, 2. So each one of the sheep is 50% of the matter. If I put on 1, so I didn't complete my whole matter, I have to put on 2 sheep. We had a similar thing by a mincha. A mincha, you have to do a kmitza. You have to put your hand into the flour and take 3 fingers worth. By putting those 3 fingers onto the mizbech, that's matter number 1. Matter number 2 is taking the frankincense, the levina, and putting it onto the mizbeach. When you do those 2 things, then you could eat the shirayim, the leftover flour of the mincha. So, what happens? This person had a bad intent, his intent of pigul, his intent of eating the breads when you're not allowed to eat the breads. Tomorrow, the only day you're allowed to eat the breads is on Shavuos. When you shech the 2 karbanos, allowed to eat on Shavuos that day and the night, but not tomorrow. So when you think about eating the bread, 1 out of the 2 breads tomorrow, you are over pigul on that 1 bread. So what happens to the 2nd bread? That's the machlokes here. The same thing would apply with the 2 bezichin. Here we go. You have a shulchan. On the shulchan, you have the 2 spoonfuls of frankincense. I'm getting to use it. By putting those 2 frankincense on the fire, burning them, that allows you to eat the bread, the lechem aponim of the shulchan. So if, when you put the frankincense, you put the levina on the mizbeach, you had an intent, a bad intent, that you're going to eat the lechem aponim, not today on Shabbos, but tomorrow on Sunday. Not all the breads, but only 6 out of the 12. Lechol echad min azdarim, here, the matir, what allows you to eat the lechem aponim are the 2 bezichim. You put the matir on the mizbeach, but thinking to your head, you're only going to eat 1 pile of these breads, 6 out of the 12. Says Rabbi Yosi, the pigul only works for what your intent was. Your intent was to eat only 6 breads outside the allotted time. In other words, tomorrow. So those 6 breads become pigul d'oraisa, and if you eat them, you chayav kares. The other 6 only become pigul to become possible, but not to become true pigul. Not that you're chayav kares. Chacham argue and they say, no, they're all connected. Everything is connected. So we must remember this Chacham and this Rabbi Yosi. If you do pigul on 6, in fact, you did pigul on 12. They're all one. They're all 1 pile. They're all from the same batch. Batch, I mean, they're all from the same group. Doesn't have to be the same batch that made in the oven, but they're all the same. So you make pigul on 1, you make pigul on all. According to Rabbi Yosi, no, whatever you make pigul on, that remains pigul. The rest, they're possible, but not pigul the raisa where you get kares. Omer Ravuna, Omer Hoyer Rabbi Yosi, pigul b'yerach shel yimin, lo nispaglo yerach shel small. Says Ravuna, a tremendous chiddush. And he says that if you do pigul on a right thigh, then the left thigh doesn't become pigul. If you think to yourself, you're going to eat this carbon, I'm allowed to eat this carbon today, and I'm not allowed to eat it tomorrow. So you think to yourself, you're gonna eat this carbon tomorrow, but what part of the carbon? Only the right thigh. The left thigh does not become pigul. My timer. What is the reason? Perhaps he's using pure logic, or he learned it from a pasuk. I can learn it from logic. The same thing would apply with Tumah. That if a person says to himself, or touches the right thigh, so the right thigh becomes tamei, and it doesn't magically spread to the left thigh, unless of course they're attached, but they're not attached. If one thigh became tamei, does it all become tamei? No way. And some say he learned it from a pasuk. When you make a pigul on one thigh, it doesn't apply to the second thigh. So Rav Huna is being questioned by Rav Nachman. It says the word la'olam in bakars. I want you to remember this word la'olam. La'olam means in all cases. The Gemara is going to ask because it typically means more than one case. La'olam in all cases, in 2, 3, 4 cases. Ein bakars as yifagel b'shteyim b'kazayis. You have to be mifagel in both. And if you have 2 animals, if the 2 sheep, in order to create pigul on the breads, you have to be mifagel while you're shechting both sheep. B'kazayis, in one kazayis. So Gemara is medayik b'shtei min, b'achas loy. Let me just make sure. No, wrong. You have to do pigul. The Gemara is talking about the breads. You have to be mefagel. Rabbi Isai, pay attention. You have to be mefagel on the 2 breads, saying that I'm going to eat the 2 breads tomorrow. But b'achas mem loy. Now we're trying to question Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi is the one who says that if you mefagel on one, it doesn't really apply to the second one as strong. So Gemara says in these breads that you mefagel, you have to be 1 kazayis from both. Who's it go according to? Ilim Rabbanon. Rabbanon say that if you mefagel on one, you mefagel on both. Afilu b'achas mem nami. All you need to do is do pigul on one, and it applies to 2. Elapshita Rabbi Yossi. So obviously this is going to according to Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says you have to be mefagel on both. Now, listen to this gewaltige Zach. If you say that, let's say by an animal is considered one body, one unit. So that's why by breads also I could understand that there's it combines, the 2 combined to 1. If you say that the right thigh and the left thigh are 2 completely different bodies, like you tried to say before, so why would the breads combine to be 1? If by 2 thighs A does not mean B, right is not left, so why is it when it comes to breads, you're telling me that A combines with B? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. Hamani Rebbe he. It's not Rebbe, it goes according to Rebbe. Which the Gemara is going to ask right away, but Rebbe has to go according to either Rabbanan or Rebbe Yossi. And if he goes according to Rebbe Yossi, then we're back to square one, then we still didn't gain anything. We're saying now that it's not Rebbe Yossi, it's Rebbe. So let's see. Hamani Rebbe. The Sanya Ashoichet Esakeves Lechol Chatzi Zais Mechal Zu. So if we take a look, let's say that these two sheep and the 2 breads, he's going to shecht the one right next to him. Let's see, the sheep on the left, and while he's shechting the sheep on the left, he's thinking about a half a kazayis of bread from the left bread that he's going to eat that tomorrow. Then when he shechs sheep number 2, which is to the right, he thinks about that. While he's shechting, he thinks, I'm going to eat a half a kazayis of the right bread. The left sheep with the left bread, the right sheep with the right bread. Each sheep, as he shechs it, he thinks about a half a kazayis. Together we have 1 kazayis. Rabbi Omer ani shezeh kosher. He says this is completely kosher. You're allowed to eat the meat of these animals. You're allowed to eat the bread. Akol beseder. It's not pigul. Why? Because each sheep is a half a matter. And with each half a matter, because you need 2 sheep to be matter, so each one is a half. And with each half, he only did a half a shear, a half a gezais, and a half a gezais is not enough. Says the Gemara, it's only because he did a half a zayis and a half a zayis. What if he didn't say a half a gezais from the left one and a half a gezais from the right one? He said a full gezais from both breads. Not the left and not the right. From both. One gezais. He changed his wording a little bit. Instead of saying half a gezais from the right bread and half a gezais from the left bread, he said one whole gezais from both. Then it's mitzaref. It's machshava is mitzarefet. Now the Gemara says, "V'Rebbe Ali b'deman." Very good. It's a great shot. But who does Rebbe go according to? He could only go either in our Mishnah according to Rabbanan or Rabbi Yosi. Now, if he goes according to Rabbanan, afilu ba'achas mem nami. According to Rabbanan, if you do pigul on one bread, it automatically jumps to the second bread. We said, so this can go according to Rabbanan. The whole reason why we said it goes according to Rebbe because we had a problem with Rabbi Yosi. But if Rebbe has to hold of Rabbi Yosi, we didn't gain anything. Says Gemara, Rebbe goes like Rabbanan. Now, what was your problem? The problem was that according to Rabbanan, if you did pigul in one challah, it should jump to the second challah. Says Gemara, a little bit of a chap here. You read it wrong. What does it say? There's a huge difference between shtehen and shnehem. In fact, says the Gemara, we don't read it shtehen with a taf. We read it with a nun, shnehem. One is a lashon zachar, referring to animals, and one is a lashon nekeva, referring to the bread. So he says like this: we're not talking about the breads. We're referring to the 2 animals that the pigul intent, his machshava of pigul, should be done while he's shechting 2 animals. You ask me, if he did pigul on one bread, it should jump to the second bread. We're not talking about the breads. That's what you thought. We're talking about the animals. As he's shechting the 2 animals, he must have the machshav of pigul in both animals. Why? Because both the animals together combine to be a matter. Each one by itself is a half a matter. So you can't do pigul on a half a matter. Now, if you do pigul on both animals, then even if the thought was about eating from one bread, that pigul thought is going to jump to the second bread as well. And this comes to exclude Rebbe Meir. Rebbe Meir holds I can do pigul on one sheep out of the 2. Why? Because I can be fagel b'chatzi mater. This is what these briskers were tummeling about. They're remembering yeshiva, how lumdish it was, and how this sugya took forever. It was an unbelievable sugya. They all remember these words. Mefaglim b'chatzi mater. What does it mean? That I could have an intent to eat the bread instead of today, when the Torah allows me to eat it today on Shabbos. I'm a kohen, I eat the lechem hapanim on Shabbos. My intent is to sneak it out of here and eat it on Sunday. That's pigul. Now, there's 2 breads on Shavuos. On Shavuos, we do 2 breads. My thought was only on one bread. It goes on both breads. But that's if, how many sheep did I think about it? I'm the kohen shechting. I'm shechting sheep 1, sheep 2. Do I have to have this thought on both sheep? Mefaglim b'chatzi mater or not mefaglim b'chatzi mater? Since the 2 sheeps combine to allow you to eat the 2 breads, so each sheep is a chatzi mater. It's 50% of what I need to allow me to eat the bread. So the question is, can I be mefagel? Can I think the intent of eating it outside the allotted time on one out of the 2? That's a half a matter. The same idea by shirayim. Shirayim is the leftover, the middle one, the giant bowl that all the kohanim get to eat. Only if I put the levina, the frankincense, on the mizbeach, and only if I put the kmitza. Kamash malon, the law, it doesn't go like Meir, and you need to be mefagel in both. Ask the Gemara, if that's the case, hihachi my la'olam. La'olam always comes to say that this halacha applies in all areas to exclude many other cases. If it only excludes one case, then I wouldn't use the word loilam. I would say the halacha is in this case like that, and in this case the opposite. I wouldn't say forever. I have a rule forever and ever. It's like this. No, that's only if you have more than one case. It says Gemara, my loilam. It comes out that I'm only excluding one case now. What's the case? Pigul only occurs when you have intent in both sheep and not in one. Only in this and not in this. Only with two sheep, not in one sheep. That's not a word that we use in such a case. We don't use the word loilam. If in fact we're talking about the two breads and the two sheep, your thought is about. You had the thought while you're shechting both sheep on the two breads. B'shteihem is the breads. B'shneihem is the sheep. Rabbi Yossi, and it goes according to Rabbi Yossi. Ula'apu came into Rabbi Meir and it comes lo'ilam, and not like Rabbi Meir who says that a chatzi matir is okay, that one out of the two is okay. Kumashal, no, you need two, and it's also coming to exclude the Rabbanan kasi. Rabbanan are of the opinion. Rabbi Meir is talking about the sheep. That if you think about one sheep. During the shechita of one sheep, you could do pigul to exclude him, and also to exclude Rabbanon who say that when you think about one bread, it jumps to the second bread. So to exclude that as well. Now, okay, now you're excluding two cases, great. So it's a good usage of the word loyal. But if you're only going to exclude one case, that you cannot do a chatzi matir. You can't have a thought while you're doing one sheep. Your thought has to be with two sheep, but that's the only case you're coming to exclude. My loylam. Void. So now, until the end of the Amud, we have one nice raya. It's two, but it's one. The basic idea of this raya is long, so I'll just say it real quickly, in 10 seconds, or maybe 20. The idea is that when a person thinks pigul on blood, we automatically take his thought and say it can't be on the blood because there's no such thing as pigul on blood, so it goes on the meat. So Mamela, if I think about the right thigh, it automatically should spread to the left. If my thought is on the blood and it spreads to the rest of the animal, so if my thought is on the right thigh, it should spread to the left thigh. That's the Gemara's question. Let's see inside. Va'oid Homer of Ashi Toshma. Rabbi Yomi Mishum Rabbi Yosi Pigul B'do B'Hanasa B'chutz Pigul. We're going to explain all this. If a person, we're talking about in the Beis Hamikdash, there's inside and outside. Inside the Heichal, that's inside. Right outside the Heichal. And the Chazarah is called outside for this case right now. Can you create pigul? We had a sugi in Zvachim. Can you or you can't create machlokes? Can you or can't you create pigul with something that's designated to go in the Heichal? So the Mandor says that yes, you could. You could create such a pigul, even though it's designated for the Heichal, but only on condition that it's outside of the Heichal. The shechita and the blood applications are outside the Heichal. If your thought is in something that goes inside the Heichal, for inside the Heichal there's no pigul. So pigul b'dova nasa b'chutz pigul, b'dova nasa b'fnim loy pigul, explains the Gemara. Keitzad, what's the case? Hayoyim b'chutz, he's standing in the Chazarah, in other words, outside of the Heichal. I'm going to do hazah. I'm going to sprinkle the blood inside the heichal tomorrow. Loy pigul. Why? Your thought was outside about something that occurs inside the heichal. Inside the heichal? No. It's not good. It's not a good avera for pigul. Next case. Reverse case. You're standing inside, thinking about outside. Imurim are the sacrificial parts. The kidneys, the fat, the skirt stick. They go on the mizbeach, outside the mizbeach, not the mizbeach haktoris, but mizbeach hachitza, and that's the outside in the Chazarah. Let me show you what it looks like. If you're new to Menachos, they used to take the leftover blood and pour it right over here, 2 little drain holes. Okay, so that's the shirayim, and that is obviously on the mizbeach hachitzon outside in the Chazarah. So that's the thought about doing something outside in the Chazarah. Loy pigul is not considered put. Why you are thinking about this inside the heichal, about something that happens outside, not a pigul. But if he's standing outside in the heichal and he thinks about doing the shirayim, what did I say? He's standing outside of the heichal. He's standing in the azara. He's thinking about pouring the shirayim outside of the azara, so everything is outside. Thumbs up. It's a good pigul. Pigel, that's considered pigel. Because that's a machshava that while he was outside, thinking about something he's going to do outside. But when he's spilling the shirayim, what exactly does he want to do pigel with? He's thinking about the blood to make the blood pigel. You can't make blood pigel. But because we learned in the Mishnah, there's an entire list of things that you cannot make pigul, and these are things that don't have a matir. Again, a matir is another item that allows you to eat the other item. When it comes to blood, karbanas, the blood, when you sprinkle the blood on the mizbeach, that allows you, the kohen, to eat the meat, or if it's a shlamim, allows the Yisrael to eat the shlamim. But you need to pour the blood. The blood is the matter for the meat, but the blood itself has no matter, so the blood itself can never become pigul. Let's talk about a mincha. A mincha, what allows it to eat the shirayim? The kmitza. So the kmitza itself doesn't have a matter. The kmitza is the matter to eat the shirayim. So therefore, the kmitza itself cannot become pigul. Akoymetz. This cannot become pigul. V'halavayna, and the frankincense also, it goes on the mizbeach. It's part of the matter of the shirayim. V'aktoiris, and the frankincense. What? No, ktoiris is not the frankincense. Ktoiris is ktoiris. I'm just thinking about where I put it, so it doesn't get lost. U'minchas kohanim, and the mincha of a kohen which is completely burnt on the mizbeach. U'minchas nesachim, and a mincha of a nesachim also completely burnt. U'minchas kohen Mashiach, and the mincha of a kohen gadol every day, twice a day. There's no kmitza. It goes completely on the mizbeach. V'hadam, and blood doesn't become pigul. So obviously, when he says that it becomes pigul when you're pouring his blood, you're trying to make the meat pigul. Says ask the Gemara. So that's the question that we mentioned before. You weren't thinking about the meat. You were thinking about the blood. Yet your machshava pigul extends from the blood to the meat. And if I eat the meat, I'm chayiv kares. You didn't think about the meat. It becomes pigul. So over here, when you think about the actual meat, like so if your thought was on the right thigh, so it should transfer over to the left thigh. Then a very, very similar question. A person does kmitza for a mincha to eat the leftover shirayim. Let's see what it looks like. Here's your mincha. And you want to eat the center bowl, the large bowl full of dough. So you did the kmitza, you took 3 fingers worth, or you're thinking about putting the kmitza, the top left corner piece, on the mizbeach tomorrow. He agrees that's considered pigul in chayav kares. As the Gemara comes to me pagel, but we just said a second ago, there's a whole list. And the first one in the list is hakoymetz. The kmitz itself does not become pigul. Why? Because the kmitz is what allows you to eat the shirayim. The shirayim has what to be materit, which is the kmitza. The kmitz itself has nothing what to be materit. It itself is a matter. A matter cannot become pigul. Elabshida. So what obviously we're trying to say, lipaglule shirayim. You want to make the shirayim pigul. Hashto. You weren't thinking about the shirayim. You were thinking about the kmitza. Yet we said that the pigul occurs on the giant middle bowl. That all becomes pigul, and if you eat it, you get kares. So over here, when we're thinking about the right thigh, certainly it should transfer to the left thigh. So we have an issue like this. In the Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi holds that if you mefagel one out of the two breads, the second bread doesn't really become pickle. You don't get carbs. But in the Braisa, it says that if you're mefagel a kazais of two breads, in other words, the two breads combine. That's what he says. If you do pigel one kazais out of both breads together, we have a problem. It's mitzaref. They're like one. So all of a sudden now he says they're one. In our mission he says they're not one. If you think about pigel for one, it doesn't do pigel for the second one. Elo Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So to answer this, again, we have a kind of a contradiction of Rabbi Yossi. That in the Mishnah it seems like he says the two breads are not connected. If you mefagel one, it doesn't connect to the second one. But in the Braisa, he seems to be saying that you can combine the two breads by saying, I want to do pigul on a kazais out of both of them. So they have a connection. You know why I could sort of dance in two chasanas? Hakasav asahan guf echad, v'hakasav asahan shnei gufen. Check this out. Here's the pasuk. In the same pasuk, they seem to be one, and they seem to be independent of each other. Because the Torah says, Shtayim, Shtei Yisrael, they are two individuals, they're not connected. And then the Torah says, Tiena, the two of them become one. So therefore, he says, Guf echad makveh. On the one hand, they're like one, that each one needs the other. Shnei gufen, the Omar, Rachmana, halachu David, v'halachu David. You do each one individually. So, Arvinu misarvim. If you decide to mix them together, you say, I want one kazais out of the two of them, that's fine, it works. That causes a son govel, because at the end of the day, the Torah made them one. Palginu mipalgi. But if you divide them up, you split them up, then they are divided. That causes a son, because the Torah made them two different bodies. Boy Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, into easier sugyas. Rabbi said the carbon toida. Here we go. Something special happened to you. A person was released from jail. He overcame a terrible disease. So he brings a toida with 40 breads. So the question is, what if he's mefagel on the 10 breads on the right? Do the rest of the breads, the 30 other breads, let's see, he's mefagel on the chometz. Does the matzah become pigel or not? Pigel belachmi toida mao. B'minchas ma'af mao. Says Rashi that the minchas ma'af has two types, 5 and 5. So it's also a type of a mincha. Same idea. Two piles of breads, I'm mefagel on one, does it occur to the other one? Yes, the same machlokes that we had in the Mishnah regarding the two loaves of bread. If you mefagel on one, according to Rabbi Yossi, it's not pigel on the other. According to Rabbanan, it is. So the same thing over here. On carbon toida, I'm mefagel on 10. So according to Rabbanan, all 40 become pigel. According to Rabbi Yossi, no, 10 is 10, and the other 30 become possible. They're not pigel. Rabbanan. B'shas chito chishev lechol chatzi zayis, u'b'shas rigo chishev lechol chatzi zayis. This is Mari, the Rabbi side. This is easy stuff, but geschmack. We know that shchita, believe it or not, is a matter. Zrika is certainly a matter, meaning by throwing the blood on the mizbeach, that allows the kohanim to eat the meat. But shchita also, by the way, is a little bit of a matter. It's not a little bit, it's a matter. So what happens if during the shchita, he thinks himself he's going to eat a half a kazais, a half a shear, outside the allotted time. I'm allowed to eat this carbon for one day. I'm going to eat it tomorrow. Just a half a kazais. And when he gets to zrika, he says another half a kazais. In other words, if he did a full kazais by shchita, that's for sure pigel. If he did a full kazais by zrika, it's for sure pigel. But he didn't do it like that. He did a half a kazais by shchita and a half a kazais by zrika. Pigel. It's good pigel. Why? You could combine the two, the beginning, the end, the two red boxes. You take half a kazais from the shchita, half a kazais from the zrika, put them together, you have a full kazais. Some say it's dafka, the first and the last, because both of those are considered a matter. They both allow you to eat the meat of the carbon. Look how far away the shchita is from the zrika. You have kabbalah nilacha in. Oh, sorry, I think I missed the words. Kabbalah v'nilacha, but the two blue boxes, kabbalah nilacha, it does not become. You cannot combine a kabbalah together with a shchita. You cannot combine kabbalah with nilacha because those are not considered material. They just allow you to continue on to bring it. They enable you to the next step, but it's not a matter by itself. If shchita and zrika combine as one, even though they're so distant from each other, the furthest from each other, shchita is number 1, zrika is number 4. So certainly number 2 and 3 can combine. But Levi said that you cannot combine any of the 4 for pigul. Shchita, zrika, kabbalah, veilacha. Says Rav, don't worry about it. Harevi, harabona. The sanya. It's machlokes Ravi Rabbona. What's the machlokes? The sanya shoyches hakeves lechol chatzi zayis mechalazu. B'chein chaveri lechol chatzi zayis mechalazu. The case that we had earlier. We have 2 breads and 2 sheep. We have bread on the right and bread on the left. We have sheep on the right, sheep on the left. So when he's shechting the sheep on the left, he's thinking to himself, I am going to eat a half a kazayis from the bread on the left. And when he shechted the sheep on the right, he thinks to himself, I'm going to eat a half a kazayis from the bread on the right. Rabbi Yomi is a kosher. Says Rebbe, it's so far-fetched, it's so vite. I'll explain soon why. I can explain now if you want. Because first of all, each sheep is only a half of the matter. Since you need to shech 2 sheep in order to allow you to eat the bread, so each sheep represents only 50%. Another problem is that what he's thinking about is each time only a half a shear. So you have a half a shear of bread in a half a matter. Those 2 things together is a 0. So everything's kosher v'yosher. There's no pigul over here. So you're allowed to eat the bread, you're allowed to eat the carbon. That's great when you have a half a matter, meaning 1 sheep, and a half a zayis from 1 bread. But in our case of shchita, he shechted thinking about a half a zayis. But the shchita is a full matir. And so is the zrika, it's 100% a matir. It's not similar to 2 sheep. 2 sheep, each one of the 2 sheep only represents 50% of the matir. But over here we have a unique situation where the shchita is a 100% the matir. It's like 2 sheep. So when you shech 2 sheep, thinking about a half a kazayis, maybe Rebbe would say that's a problem of pigul. Maybe he wouldn't say it's at least he wouldn't say it's kosher. He says to Abayo, if in fact Rebbe holds that when you do shchita, which is a full matter, but he had intent only for a half a kazayis, and in that he would say that it's pigul. If so, that can't be. Why? I'll prove to you that you're wrong. I'll prove to you that there's no difference if he does shchita and zrika, and each one, shchita did a half a kazayis, and in zrika did a half a kazayis. It's no different than the case of shechting 2 sheep on Shavuos, and each one he thought about a half a kazayis. What do you tell me? In Shavuos, the 2 sheep, each one only represents 50% of the matter. But shchita is 100% of the matter. Guess what? If Rebbe didn't hold that by shchita, and what? And by shchita, shechting a full matter, doing shchita and thinking about half a kazayis, and then doing another full matter, doing zrika, thinking about half a kazayis. He says it is pigul, it does combine. Then he would be forced to be geyser in the case of 2 sheep on Shavuos and say that it's asur. He wouldn't say it's kosher v'yosher. Kosher v'yosher. Not kosher v'yosher. Kosher v'yosher. He wouldn't say that. Why? Because you have to make a gzeira. That's how Rabbanan operate. If there's a case similar to it, then it's so similar, Klal Yisrael might get confused. So again, if in the case, I'll put it on the, we'll do like this. If in this case, where he did shchita and a half a kazayis, and zrika and a half a kazayis, he holds it's einu chanami, it's 100% pigul, then in this case, Rebbe would also be forced to say that it's pigul, at least midrabanan, that he did a shchita of 1 sheep, thinking about half a kazayis on 1 bread, and then shchita on another, even though they're not the same case as you asked, but they're similar cases, you'd have to be geyser. Listen, the words might be complicated, but the concepts are simple. We see that even Rabbi Yossi and Rabbanon that we're discussing, they also make zeres. Where do we see this? Rabbi Yossi gozar this nan because it says that if a person says, I'm going to take this levina, this frankincense, and put it on the mizbeach, Tomorrow, Rabbi Yossi possible and bikaris. He makes a gzeir and he says, "Listen, it's not karis, but I make it possible." Like Chacham and pigul b'chayim of karis. Where Chacham say it's real pigul, Rabbi Yossi at least is geyser. Rabbanan nami geyser. Where do you see the Rabbanan geyser? It's not pigul b'komitz v'leibel levayna. If the person did pigul on one of the two matirim, here are the two matirim of shirayim. There's two things that you have to do. You have to put both of the levayna and the kmitza on the mizbeach. And he thought himself, I'm going to do pigul by the kaimetz, by the kmitza, not the levayna. By levayna v'levi kaimetz, or the levayna. Pigul b'chayom of kares. So you see, he says there's no kares, but they say it's also, they make exera. When we see that even Rabbanan and Rabbi Yossi make exera. Amalei, hachi Bishlam asam, gozer Rabbi Yossi, kaimetz the levayna, the kaimetz the mincha. Say, listen, it only makes sense to make exera when there's something similar, something that I have to make exera about. But in our case, there's no such thing as a chatzi matter anywhere in the Torah. Nothing. There's no other case like that. So there's no point to make exera. So what? There's a case of the levayna. I have to be geyser because of the kmitza of a mincha. Rabbanan gazer komitz al the minchas chayta. And Rabbanan said, listen, I'm going to be geyser on one thing of the kmitza because of the minchas chayta, which doesn't have any other. That doesn't have shirayim. Levayna which doesn't have a kmitza. Levayna do levayna habab b'zichen. And I'm going to make gzeir for one levayna because of another, the levayna of the spoons by the Ramban. I have to be one sheep for another sheep. Bozach otu bozach chaver, one spoonful because of the Elohacha miika chatzi mata v'chatzi achila ba'alma d'leikim v'ligzer. There's no other case like this in the world that I have to get up and make a gzeir about it. We're just going to try to get to the Mishnah, obviously. And this makes sense that this is Rabbanan's reasoning, the Ktani Sefer, because it says, they agree to Reb Meir that by the sinner's mincha and the mincha of a saita, that if a person where both those two menachos go completely on the mizbeach, there's no kmitza, that if he did pigul bekoimetz shepigul b'chayom of cars. There's cars. Why should I come to a matter? Halav lives in the cloud. But what are you saying? Pshita. There's no kmitza. Mi'ika matter achrina. There's no other thing to be matter. The whole thing goes on. This is what he's trying to say. The time of the koimetz mishum the ika koimetz the minchas choyte damilei. The reason why in a regular mincha, when you take the kmitza, your chayiv is because of the gzeira of the minchas chayta that's similar to it. So you see, only in cases that they have similarities do we make gzeiras, but not in something that has nothing similar to it. Rabbi Sai, have a wonderful day.
Merit the schus of spreading Torah throughout the world. Sponsor a shir today. MDYsponsor.com or sponsor at MDY.com.